7 o'clock on Tuesday, October 10th. We will get this Town of Frederick meeting called to order, please.
Trustee Brown?
Here.
Trustee Tavelli?
Here.
Trustee Mayor Kreitz?
Here.
Trustee Lamont?
Here.
Mayor Pro Tem March?
Here.
Trustee Mahan? Trustee Padilla?
Here. Great, thank you. I will maybe note for the record if Trustee Mahan does arrive, so if someone sees him, let me know, please. Let's stand and join each other for the Pledge of Allegiance, please. Flag is kind of tucked in over there.
I pledge
Allegiance to the flag, thank you, Cheryl, United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Sorry.
Why?
I feel like I jumped the gun there.
No, that's okay.
Sorry, pledging.
That's all right. Pledge away. Thank you very much. I don't believe we have any changes to our agenda tonight. No, and no special presentations. So we'll just get started on public comment. This portion of our agenda is provided to allow members of our audience to provide comments to the town board. Please sign in and I will call you. But tonight it looks like we have Cheryl Garcia. Will you join us at the podium, Gil, as well, if you'd like? I have address for the record already here, so I'll just leave it.
She said hi and thank you. I'm Gil. I'm Cheryl's husband. She wants me to read her concern. She says, I'm Cheryl Garcia, 4805 Kingbird Drive in Eagle Valley. This handsome guy is Gil. He is my boyfriend and Cheryl Pritter. I'm here to ask again if Parks and Recreation Department can have a snow removal program for Frederick's vintage people. Minimal charge for each snow event of measurable size. The Snow Buddies program is a volunteer program with no guarantees. Our HOA requires we have our sidewalks shoveled within 24 hours of measurable snow. Colorado weather can be unpredictable, and even volunteers may find it difficult to dig out on time from a heavy snowfall. There's no guarantee that snow will always be cleared within the 24-hour time frame. However, volunteers will make a good faith effort to do so. Due to the popularity of the program, residents may be put on a wait list until a volunteer becomes available. We aren't getting any younger. Shoveling snow contributes to high rise of heart attacks in winter. I'd like to keep my boyfriend around for a few more years at least. Thank you for your time.
Yes, thank you. That's a great recommendation, and we'll continue to have conversations about how we can maybe provide that sort of service for our community. So,
We'll pay. Yeah. She doesn't want me to do it anymore.
Noted. Okay, thank you. I don't believe we have any other members of our community who have signed up for public comment. I will mention, Kobe, I know you're in the room, and Brian, you as well. I actually just received an email from a resident regarding the same request, as they are not getting a response on the Snow Buddies program. So maybe we can confirm if Carbon Valley is actually doing the Snow Buddies program, and if not, maybe there's an opportunity for the town of Frederick to participate in creating our own of some sort. So I'm sure it will be here before we know it. So if you don't mind checking into that, I would appreciate it. Great, thank you. All right, we have staff reports. Brian, we have your staff report tonight. Anything you'd like to share in particular?
Just a few things, Madam Mayor and members of the board. Again, I think it's important the great telephone town hall, that was a collective effort of the board and the great work that they did, as well as Renee. The preparation that went into that was tremendous, as well as the rest of the leadership team and having questions prepped and ready to go, as well as Angela and organizing and helping out with the event. So again, a great opportunity to reach out to the community The other thing, just a huge kudos to the golf staff. I know they've been under a lot of pressure this year, but they did have a great, successful Santa Cops event. They had over 72 slots filled, and just being over there, um, positive. It was great. Really good team members, and overall, I think everybody really enjoyed it. And the town of Frederick should definitely shine that day. A couple of things just to note in there that we've talked about over time. I know the engineering department's been working hard and has got some bids out on the Frederick Way crosswalk. So stay tuned to that. We'll hopefully get something moving before the end of the year. And then a reminder of the Frederick Recreation Area Refresh Day is this Saturday at Frederick Recreation Area from 10 to 2.
What's a little more on that? What is that exactly?
It's really just an opportunity to go out and showcase Frederick Recreation Area. Any volunteer help to clean up things here or there, just to showcase our open space out there. And yeah, if you have free time to come out, great. I think we have some volunteers that will be out there as well, just cleaning it up, trash and some things out there. So
We volunteered you, Chad.
To clean up trash?
Yeah,
All right. Don't have anything planned at this point.
you do now. It's
As
gonna
long as
be
I
fun.
can run around the lake a few times while I'm
yeah, do some laps.
There you go. Yeah. 10 to 2, you said. Refresh. 10 to noon. Oh, 10 to noon. Okay, thank you. Mayor Pro Tem March, did you hear that update on the crosswalk at Frederick Way?
muted.
You're muted, my friend. I'm sorry.
That's okay. No, I missed that. I'm sorry.
It sounds like there's continued conversations and some potential action in the next couple of weeks on that crosswalk at Frederick Way. I know you had asked about that a few weeks ago, so
Thank you very much.
thank you. Any questions for Brian?
No.
No.
Any coordinated, I saw the analytics from the telephone town hall. I echo your comments on that. I think maybe it didn't feel as successful because we only had 100 or so folks on the call, but just in remembering what it was like in 2020 when we had virtual meetings from our own dining rooms and no one was on the call with us. So I appreciate getting creative as a community and trying to find ways to, instead of saying community, come to us in the town of Frederick and tell us, what you appreciate or don't appreciate in the town of Frederick, we'll come to you. So I think that was admirable of our staff and team to decide, let's try something new and see what happens. And I consider that a success. We were able to communicate with 100 or so residents who may not have ever stepped foot in town hall, and I think that's a win. So I commend those efforts and really appreciate it. I want to make sure we're following up. There were a few polls, I think, that we can address, in particular on transportation and a couple of those items. I'll keep on those, but if any board members want to take those follow-ups as well and communicate with those residents, let me know so that we're not, I guess, multiple, of us aren't reaching out. That would be helpful. Thank you.
Can we get like an email or something to respond to if we want to do one of the?
Sure. Yeah, that works fine. I do believe we have all the data, though. Yes? Great. Okay, thank you. Any other questions for Brian? No? Okay, thank you. Okay, our consent agenda is what we're moving on to next. Our consent agenda items are considered to be routine and will be enacted by one motion and vote. There will be no separate discussion of consent agenda items unless a board member so requests, in which case the item will be removed from the consent agenda and considered at the end of the consent agenda. Would anyone like to remove one of your two items this evening? If not, some direction on your consent agenda would be appreciated.
Madam Mayor, I move that we approve the consent agenda as presented.
Second.
In a second.
Trustee Padilla,
Yes.
Trustee Brown,
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem March,
Yes.
Trustee Tabelli,
Yes.
and Trustee Lamont.
Yes.
Passes 5-0.
Thank you. All right, we'll move right into action agenda item D. Kobe, please.
You need a clicker.
Yeah, if you got one. Hey, does the laser work?
I feel it working.
I'm going to try to be brief tonight because I realize I'm kind of like the bad garage band before Metallica takes the stage. You've got a much
Aw.
better presentation after mine.
Oh.
So rather than make you sit through a half an hour of a set you don't want to listen to, I will try to go quick.
Way to set yourself up, though.
Yeah. It's important to set the bar low.
Okay.
So we're going to talk Community Wildfire Protection Plan. This evening, it's kind of a second in a series of highlights we've had on parks and open space related presentation, really highlighting some of the ongoing work and future investments we have in the pipeline. This is by far what I would say is the most non-traditional for my department. Typically, parks and open space and recreation doesn't get into wildfire mitigation this far east in the plains very often. But I have some experience in the past as a wildland firefighter and doing some of these other plans. So I thought to align with our strategic plan, particularly partnering with other public safety agencies, that this was an interesting opportunity that my department could kind of take the lead on. So your actual action item tonight is authorizing a resolution in support of our participation in this grant with the 4 agencies listed, and it would just be applying for the grant. So we're not required to have your resolution of support for the grant, but we would like it just to make our grant more competitive. But know that there'll be other steps down the line that we will have to come back at the very least in consent to have you approve a few more items. So the real focus of this project is the partnership aspect. It's these 4 entities: Frederick, Firestone, the fire department, and Carbon Valley EMS. We were approached by Carbon Valley EMS to take part in this project. We agreed to kind of take the lead on the grant application. I've done 2 of these grants before, and of course with Tracy on the grant writing side, we felt like we would probably provide us the most competitive edge in actually applying for the grant. Carbon Valley would be the project lead. They'll actually be responsible for hiring the consultant and some of those types of things. Obviously, the fire department's going to provide technical expertise, and then Firestone comes in with their portion of the match and some of the expertise for their community. Probably your first question is, why not Dacono? Dacono is part of the Mountain View Fire District. They're already doing a CWPP with Boulder County. So our plan would be able to piggyback off of that if we were successful with the grant, to make sure that those 2 districts align in how their goals are set up. I'd kind of mentioned it before, but know that we wouldn't move forward without probably an IGA. At an absolute minimum, we're going to make sure that we're not kind of being taken advantage of to any extent just because we do have some of that expertise. But that has not been the conversation so far. It's been a very collaborative effort. So you're probably asking, what is a community wildfire protection plan? So it falls under the Community Wildfire Defense Program. It's a Forest Service program. It's been around for a long time. The difference now is through the Bipartisan Infrastructure Act, they allocated a one-time allocation of almost $1 billion for grant funds. So what this grant would do is allow us to access the actual project grants later. So if we decided we wanted to do a big mitigation project on Boulder Creek, or we wanted to do any number of other large projects, we're then eligible for those federal grants. Without a CWPP, you're not eligible for the project grants. It's important to know the plan is not regulatory. It cannot require a municipality to conduct any of the recommended actions, and that's in the text of the federal statute. The purpose of the act, and it says this, and I'll paraphrase, is to create a framework to bring diverse local interests together to address wildland-urban interface challenges through engagement between stakeholders and local communities. It's somewhat rare in federal grants that it doesn't prescribe regulatory actions, but I will note that while it isn't regulatory, There is a potentially political issue with CWPPs that I've experienced firsthand. So if you call for a certain mitigation project, and remember, this is high level. It's using science and data to prescribe big landscape scale changes. It's not the small open space behind your house. It's open space writ large in an entire vegetative area. If you do have an incident in those areas and you haven't done those mitigation projects, that can become an issue. We do our level best when we write these plans to ensure that the language that we use says that these will take, X amount of time. They're in no particular order. We're very good about prescribing them in such a manner to minimize that political downside. But I like noting that when we do these because that is something that's out there. So the three things that the plan really will kind of look at: local firefighting capability and emergency management capability. You probably think, well, how does that really have to do with us? So between public works and parks, we can actually take a pretty massive part in any wildfire, either prevention or if we have to go put something out. And that's not firefighting, but we have heavy equipment. More often not, the easiest way to put out a wildfire is to go till up whatever it's burning through so that it can't burn through it. With our loaders and our equipment and our motor graders, we can be an integral part in a regional outlook for wildfire defense. It'll look at some certain code things, the need for defensible space at homes and subdivisions. That's obviously been a hot topic in Colorado since the Marshall Fire. And then for us specifically, where and how do we prioritize land management actions? Where should we look at a shorter grass prairie? Where should we look at irrigation? Where should we put fire lines in that should be permanent? Things like that. So to really put it in kind of another way, and I apologize for the graphic images. I realize fire is a tough subject here in Colorado, but it's easier to see in a picture than it is me talking. So if you kind of look up on this, in the bottom right-hand corner, we had basically pine trees right up next to all these houses. One of those pine trees was struck by lightning, started a fire through those, got into the open space behind it. Basically, they didn't have a CWPP. They didn't have defensible space. They didn't have fire lines. The houses were too close together. They planted not only trees, pine trees, which are among the most flammable trees, that actually touch the homes. So here's a community that did have a CWPP and had put some thought into advanced planning and how we built communities. And what you really see here are a couple of things. So when we're looking at trying to defend an area, you've got fire lines that are permanent right through here. That's what that little kind of trail is. That gave those firefighters, when they came in, they were able to backburn from here up to that. So that really intense fire coming down this hill couldn't get into that neighborhood because they'd already put a controlled burn in front of it. Additionally, they went in this chimney area where fire travels really quickly uphill and put in an actual irrigated landscape. Now, that one is xeriscape, but it had the ability to turn on overhead sprinklers and was able to protect that. Now, these are somewhat bad examples because these are kind of microeconomic. The plan is macroeconomic, but it gives us that ability to have those grant dollars that we can kind of prescribe these things or do some of these things on the areas that we do own, or ask that new developments do those as they come along. Our timeline, we're still working that out. The second round of grants is due at the end of this month. We'll more than likely probably focus on the March grant. We still have a few things to work out. And it'll take us, if that grant's approved, it'll be about a year to do the plan. It's actually pretty easy. They're not boilerplate, but a lot of the background work is the science and the data and things like that. And that's all I have. Like I say, I just want to reiterate that we won't move forward unless we have a very strong partnership and an IGA with those other agencies. But I feel like probably today we should be able to get there.
Thank you.
Questions?
Are we the first to hear about this, or has Firestone also heard about this?
I haven't seen it in their board agenda, but what we were told was that they had brought it forward behind the scenes. I don't know what that means, but more or less, yes. You're the first one to make an official action on it.
When you mentioned just a few moments ago, and I understand that I'm in some ways providing a sweeping generalization, in your comment. But when you say ask new developments to participate, are there ways that we can require new developments to participate? And is that part of the recommendation in this process? Because quite frankly, asking a development to
Yeah.
put in safeguards that are more expensive to the development most likely won't happen. So are there conversations right now on our land use code and our comprehensive plan that could happen after this conversation this evening to require? Okay.
I forgot to wear my Ali Van Dudecom. Yes, you would have the ability to use this plan to update your code. You could update it with the current national fire safety standards. There's a number of things you can do. What this can help with is local prescriptions. If there's something that is different than the national standard, it can say, hey, Frederick and Firestone, you guys have X vegetation. You should consider an additional defensible space or something like that. So it can help localize those code decisions so they're unique for Frederick.
So once we have the plan and the data, then we can draft the regulations that we can cause to be enforceable for those newer developments and redevelopment as that moves forward.
And I would also mention one thing that I forgot. The maximum that we can ask for is $250,000. It has a 25% match that we would split 3 ways. I doubt that we ask for that much money. It's probably less. But if we did ask for the maximum, our match would be $8,300. So it's a lot of work on my end, but it's not a lot of town funds to get a pretty functional, useful document.
No-brainer.
Yeah. Would the solutions then from a Firestone and Frederick perspective be the same? We would all have the same solutions in
It's
place?
not. The jurisdictional boundaries in a plan like this are definitely, I would say, junior to your vegetation types, whatever your housing types, density, things like that, versus this is Frederick, this is Firestone. It's going to look at this is a river bottom, this is high plains, this is a dense multifamily zoned area, sort of things like that.
Okay, that's helpful.
Is it something that we can move forward with if there is hesitancy from another one of the partners in moving forward with this?
We would likely be ineligible for the grant. One of the things that they want to see is cross-divisional or cross-jurisdictional partnerships. We qualify for the severity level of wildfire risk to meet the grant, but I doubt we would ever get it. But that's not to say that we couldn't. If this does fall apart, we can roll all of those same science and principles into our open space planning and our code planning and that kind of thing. This would just help expedite that as we're doing all the other land use code updates.
But one other thing, on the table file, you'll see an updated resolution. The body of the resolution isn't changed. There was a little bit of a typo in terms of it being in the packet was labeled as a consent agenda item and had some verbiage. So the draft in front of you, the body of it's the same. The only thing that changed is the title. So I removed that consent agenda language out of it and put in a title.
Okay. You all have a copy of this? Yes?
I would also add that by doing it through this way rather than internally, it does add a considerable amount of legitimacy to the data and the prescriptions that we come up with versus just the behind the scenes bureaucrats like me coming up with something for the community. We use national science data, local, state, all that kind of stuff.
Thank you.
Any other questions for Kobe?
Not for me.
All right, some action on resolution D, please, or action item D.
Mayor,
Go ahead.
Mayor, may I move to, that we approve the resolution 23-R-41, providing support for the town of Frederick's participation in Community Wildfire Defense Program grant application to create a community wildfire protection plan.
Second.
Trustee Brown?
Yes.
Trustee Padilla?
Yes.
Trustee Lamont?
Yes.
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem March?
Yes.
Motion passes 5-0.
Thank you. Kobe, you're like an onion. You have a lot of layers to you that I never, every time you're up here, you talk about something with a level of expertise that surprises me. So
You know,
fascinating.
I don't know where I learned it all, but
Yeah.
somewhere.
It's impressive.
You stare down a wildfire a few times and you kind of, well, I guess I better learn what I'm doing.
Yeah, I'm impressed. Well done. Thank you. Also, whenever there's a presentation, excuse me, on the screen, would you let me know, please, if Mayor Pro Tem had a comment? I just can't see. Sorry. I know we don't have virtual participants very often, but every now and then I just can't see if he has anything. Thank you. Appreciate that. All right, my apologies. Hi, Ryan.
Good evening, Madam Mayor and Board of Trustees.
Evening.
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 Perfect. I do appreciate Colby's reference to Metallica, although I don't think I'm deserving of a title of being compared to them. In fairness, I usually prefer to go see the opening act, and Colby is one of my favorite people to see present, so I would say it's reciprocal. Wanted to walk through with you all this evening an opportunity that we have before the town of Frederick that has a few different components that are broken down into hopefully some digestible pieces that we can kind of walk through. This is an effort that's been something that has been in the works for some time. Certainly have to give credit to those in the room that have been working on this on a regular basis and even an infrequent basis. And so we'll kind of go through that. If at any point there's questions or anything, certainly invite those questions. I sort of have a little bit of a presentation, and then there's some outside representatives as well that are here today. If there's any questions that might be more appropriately addressed to that group as well. So first off, I wanted to start with talking, as we usually do, with our strategic plan. And it's interesting because most of the things that land in my world here in the town of Frederick happen to fit into the community and economic vitality realm. And that's not any different here. What we're talking about very much has a tie to community and economic vitality within the town of Frederick. But the thing that actually speaks more poignantly, actually, is the strategic, reliable, and sustainable infrastructure, specifically within the strategic plan that you all adopted. Item 4.1 talks very, very clearly about direction and a goal to have staff look at both short-term and long-term plans to evaluate all of our facilities, looking at the current needs and looking at the long-term growth for the town of Frederick. And so that certainly rose to the top because I think that very clearly hits squarely with what we're talking about today. This slide is really meant to just provide a bit of a chronology of how we got to where we're at as it relates to our existing public works facility. And it goes back about 10 years ago when that public works facility was constructed. And then you can see quickly in 2014 when the project was completed, that's something where at that point actually staff was reaching a point of a space capacity limits when they moved in 2014. Fast forward to when the board adopted a strategic plan in 2021, and from every point since then, the board has continued to prioritize looking at our facilities, the collective our facilities, not just one facility, to look at their current utilization, the needs, and what the demands of the growing community would be on being able to maintain an increased level of service throughout the town of Frederick. And so that showed up on the strategic plan. And then in 2022, that's when staff actually partnered with the Department of Local Affairs to be able to complete a needs assessment. And I can remember when that group came in to present to you all sort of the findings of that report, they went through each facility sort of systematically, took photos of the things that are working, the things that aren't working. Some of it was probably obvious, some of it maybe less so. And so that study was done last year. And then in earlier of this year, the town, again operating under the strategic plan, we hired a group, Stantec, to complete a true space plan, a 50-year space plan based off of that needs assessment for our public works facility, which was one of the two facilities that was kind of flagged as needing the most help, soonest, fastest, quickest, based on the growth that we've had in recent years. And as part of that effort, Stantec took a data-driven approach in their analysis. This is really not any different than when site selectors reach out to the town of Frederick for proposals for sites that they're evaluating to see if it's suitable to locate a company in Frederick. We effectively did the same thing on our level. We had a matrix, the consultant had a matrix of 40 to 50 data points that they looked at that were ranked and weighted. And then we looked at those items, and then we actually looked at 6 different sites, including our existing public works facility, for suitability as it stacks up against those data points. In that process, the site that sort of rose to the top or percolated to the top as being the most optimal was 7400 Eagle Boulevard, which is coincidentally not too far from where our existing facility is located. That being said, all 6 of the sites, it was identified that they needed to be within a 1 or a 2 mile radius. So we weren't looking at the far east side of Frederick or the far west side of Frederick. We're trying to maintain some sort of a centralized location so that way service delivery doesn't suffer as the community fills in over the coming years. Also, in 2023, the board had provided staff through perhaps a series of unfortunate nature events with the snow events that occurred this last year, with some direction and support, frankly, to elevate our level of service in how we do snow control operations at the town of Frederick. And so this is a bit of a primer, but you're going to see this in some of the upcoming proposed and draft documents and presentations about how the staff is actually incorporating that directive into our existing resources that were already appropriated, but also in future resources that might be included in a proposed 2024 budget. Looking at that assessment that the Department of Local Affairs funded through the study that we did last year, the Public Works facility had several red flag areas that were actually highlighted and called out in that, and ultimately the reason why this facility was one of the top 2 that ranked the highest in terms of needing significant investment, expansion, or replacement. Among those include the fact that there's inadequate office spaces for the people who need office space, people who are in roles where they're having to have personnel conversations, private conversations, aren't able to do so in a satisfactory manner. Storage capacity is something that's a limitation at our current Public Works facility. And you'll see here I have some photos that came from that effort that kind of show how we're working through that. It doesn't look all that different from maybe a college dorm where you're storing all your things together under your bed and trying to operate and function in there. We kind of have some of those situations, I'd say, when you walk through our Public Works facility. When you look at space issues related to storage of our equipment, many of the pieces of our apparatus, our fleet, are items that have to be in completely climate-controlled environments year-round. These are pieces of equipment that cost several $100,000, and that helps maintain the longevity and the useful life of those items. We can store those things in our service bays, but then that means we can't service other vehicles as well. So we run into a significant space issue because we don't have some of that heated storage. And so that space plan that we did earlier this year with Stantec identified all those needs. What does that look like if you have semi-enclosed storage spaces or heated spaces for that apparatus? What does it look like to have a break room that actually fits your employees? What does it look like to have storage spaces and sort of the back of house things that usually get forgotten when you do facilities planning work? But these are the items that came out in our needs assessment. Again, outside group that did this work in 2022. Here's some of the photos that were captured at that time. You can see there we have in our locker room, that also apparently is our custodian closet where we're storing either paper towel or toilet paper as well. We have inadequate or insufficient and inequitable storage facilities for men versus women workers that operate there out of that facility as well. And then sort of the conclusion that came from that assessment from that group was that the facility got a score of B, a B rating, in consideration of the fact that it's currently over capacity and unable to fill the space needs of the current Public Works department, not a future public works department when we level up our service, or in a public works department then 10 years from now. That's our current needs. So, Agilent happens to be a next door neighbor to the town of Frederick, and they have approached the town of Frederick regarding our interest and being able to entertain somewhat of an opportunity that would serve mutually to benefit Agilent and their potential for future growth in the town of Frederick, but also help our growth needs as a community and as a town organization as well, to be able to find land that is suitable moving forward. And that is and to include this land of 7400 Eagle, which is currently owned by Agilent Technologies. It's about 10 acres, which actually was the number that was used in the site selection assessment. It was right around 9 acres that was needed for a 50-year public works facility. And so the idea or the framework of this arrangement is that Agilent would provide fee simple interest to the town of Frederick for that piece of property. And what that means is that there's no exchange of dollars outside of recording fees. So that's a nominal, small amount for that entire 10-acre property. In turn, the town of Frederick would enter into a long-term lease with Agilent for our existing facility at 7301 Eagle Boulevard. Now, the next logical question is how can that happen when they're currently occupying part of 7400 and we're occupying 7301? And the way that has been addressed through the documents provided to you this evening is through a couple of leasebacks. And in that, and I'll show a map here in a second, you can see here on this aerial our existing public works facility in the yellow, and then 7400 Eagle, which is largely rectangular on the bottom and kind of irregular on the top in the red there. So Agilent's proposing to give us all of the red, and then we would be entering into a lease agreement, a long-term lease agreement for the site that's in the yellow. In the interim, what would happen is then we, the town, would lease back this portion in the red, which is half the site, or if you drive out there today, it's the site that's generally improved with a parking lot that currently has like construction trailers on it, would be leased back to Agilent for their use. We already have access to this by virtue of a construction easement that the board previously took action on in September. Similarly, we would do a lease back to the town of Frederick for our continued use of our operations, which is really largely contained within the fenced area, as we discussed previously. The board will recall that there was a recent action in September to provide a construction access easement to this western side of the site for the purposes of construction staging that might occur related to activities with the expansion of Agilent to the south, which is where they're currently building. Their existing facilities are shown here on the aerial map. The current expansion that you're seeing out there, if you were to go drive by and see the large steel work out there, that's actually pushing up to this northern boundary right here. I guess I'll pause there and ask if there's any overarching questions about the mechanics of what that looks like. Okay. The period of the long-term lease is 99 years. The period of the short-term leasebacks is about 3 years, 2027 plus a year, and that is a very important time frame. One, it allows Agilent to presumably complete construction on their existing facility, what they're calling Project Endeavor. It also provides time for us to be able to mobilize and design and construct a replacement public works facility and occupy that facility within that same time frame. The board has several alternatives it could consider as a matter of practice. One is that the board could choose to make a motion to support the agreement as has been presented to you in substantially the same format and as finalized by the town attorney. A second option would be to provide direction to staff to be able to make modifications, revise the agreement, and bring it back for consideration. That is something that, should the board choose that option, would be something that we would have to work with our partners in Agilent to make sure that we all understand what is being asked and make sure everybody agrees to that. A third option the board could choose is to deny this request or not take a motion on it in the first place, in which case it would die for lack of a motion at that time. The staff recommendation would be to go ahead and approve this agreement for a variety of different reasons. Um, Independently, we determined that our site wasn't a suitable site for our growth needs in the town of Frederick. Independently, we worked with our consultants that we selected to be able to help quantify that so we could have a data-driven approach. Independently, we did that site selection analysis and looked at 6 different sites, including our existing site for its existing and future suitability for moving forward. And this happens to be something that aligns with an opportunity that provides a means for us to be able to facilitate that expansion in a nearby area, so that way level of service can continue to improve and exist in a similar fashion moving forward. This is timely as well. One of the things that's a benefit of this is when you have a willing seller and a willing purchaser, makes things go a whole lot faster than if you have to go and involve a bunch of brokers and go through all that negotiation. Further, staff has met with the board previously to receive guidance at various steps along the way to make sure that we weren't getting too far off track or anything. And we believe this is reflective of that feedback. And if it's not, please let us know. And so the other thing that's important to note is this is a cost neutral item for the town of Frederick. There is a lease component, a lease number that's referred to in the lease document, and that is right around $33,000 a month. But it's a reciprocal lease, and so that's something that you saw in the staff report. That while it's an expense for the town of Frederick on a monthly basis, it's also a revenue in the exact same amount. So if it adjusts annually, it would adjust on both sides. So effectively, there's a net neutral cash position for the town of Frederick. That being said, if this item does move forward, it is something that we would have to show in our finances, and you would see that in future financial documents, so that way we could capture that on the books for your consideration. And usually this is where I pause and ask for questions. I'd like to, if I could, take a moment. We have a couple of representatives from Agilent here, one who happened to just already be here locally, and the other one who flew in from Santa Clara, I think earlier today. But I think, Brian, you want to come up? I've asked Brian if he would be willing to come up. Brian's been a huge element of our partnership with Agilent over the years, but just speak to some of the different ways that Agilent has participated and contributed to the larger community. Thank you, Brian.
Thanks, Ryan. Madam Mayor, Board of Trustees, thanks for having us tonight, and appreciate you guys taking this under consideration. I've been in Colorado for 20 years, mostly on. I had a short stint where I was transferred out, then I had a chance to come back and I jumped at it. I really enjoy this area. Historically, when the company was looking to expand, and we have a current facility in the Boulder area, we looked, across the United States and settled on Weld County, and specifically in Frederick, where we're at today. I started with Agilent in 2016, when we were actually the week before we did groundbreaking for the site. The company has a rich history of working, to employees' values, and we focus a lot on that. And part of that manifests itself in a lot of different awards that the company's received, being a best employer in the U.S. as well as worldwide. We have over 16,000 employees worldwide. But in Colorado, I've taken a deep interest in trying to understand how we can participate in the community. And we do a lot of things, but I'd say one of the most important that we started a few years back is working with the high school, the Frederick High School. We work on their P-Tech program,
currently, I have over 30 employees that volunteer their time to mentor the students at the high school. And I'm proud to say that this week we started our first P-Tech student that graduated from the program. He started this week, and we're excited about having him on board. But beyond that, I think from a company standpoint, they see this type of interaction as value. The company provides every employee with over 40 hours of paid volunteer time. So earlier in September, we had a week of giving, and we try to help teams coordinate various activities, and whether it's the adopted street of Tipple Parkway that we managed, and we've done that a few times this year. We did Habitat for Humanity. We did United Way in Weld County. We give the employees an opportunity to not only give back to things that they like to do, but also we pay them to do that. So I think it's a nice feature that the company has invested in, employees realizing that it's not just the fact that we are here, but that we have an opportunity to give back. The Frederick site, huge opportunity for growth, and you guys are seeing that. We're investing a significant amount of money, but the company sees this as a site of excellence, and part of the opportunity for the property was really to give us the ability to expand from north to south, or from south to north, I guess, in a parallel path. We did buy the property across the street. We do need additional space, but as we talked to the town and understood what your needs were, and it seemed like there was a good fit, we jumped all over it and thought, hey, this is a perfect scenario for us, and we're excited about that. So again, thanks again for having me tonight, and I'm happy to answer any questions that you have, or I'll sit down and let Ryan continue.
Any questions for Brian?
Thank you.
Thank you.
Nice to see you, though. Thank you.
See you.
So I need to eat a little bit of crow. So this was noticed as a resolution, but per the state statute, and that's my apologies. Per our state statutes, in order to do a lease of this term length, it has to be done by ordinance. So I apologize that that wasn't caught by me when I was drafting this at the front end. I've just been digging through the state statutes to see if we need to have a public hearing as a part of ordinance. I don't see anything that requires that of a statutory town to do that. Statutory cities and typically home rules, that has been our practice in the past. So we've got a couple of options this evening when it comes to the action itself. You can either authorize the change for this to be an ordinance instead, or we can bring this back at the next meeting kind of on a consent agenda basis to make sure that it's an ordinance officially, if you'd like to do that. So I apologize. I'll keep my foot in my mouth. My bad. The town attorney's office did spend a lot of time reading through the 80 plus pages of the agreement. We had a lot of fun back and forth between Agilent and the town. It was a good collaborative process to make sure that their needs were met, but also that the town's needs were met in terms of what is it that we need to be cognizant of the public, and what is our operations and things of that nature. You saw some of that a few weeks ago when we had the kind of the temporary lease agreement for some of the space around our current public works facility, so that was incorporated into these agreements as well.
Maybe a comment and then a question. So I think I really appreciate how much we've background that we've gotten, and that you have kind of checked in with us along the way. I think this does reflect what we've talked about. Also, the comment is that I have toured the Public Works facility, and it is very, very cramped. The office space doesn't really concern me that much, because a lot of those folks aren't always in their offices, but it's the place that they take care of their equipment, and where the snow removal equipment and things like that are stored. So, I think Trustee Brown has said it before, like, we need something that lasts for 50 years and beyond, because we're a growing town. So
I appreciate the attention to that.
Any other comments, questions, concerns? May I ask, Ryan, we've been talking about this location and this potential agreement now for about a year, would you say? Would you please, after this meeting, perhaps help find and cite the other conversations we have as a board and staff have had on this item? If there are community members, for example, that are watching this meeting right now or watching this meeting next week, that would like to see previous conversations or hear the discussion at some point, would you please help point out those? They were very thoughtful conversations that we've had for a very long time, and they include a lot of context that we're all considering tonight that seems like we're making rash decisions when in all reality we've been discussing it very thoroughly for a long time. So I want to make sure that we're pointing that out to the community and they can address any of their questions or comments.
Yes, ma'am. We can absolutely come up with a list of all the different times that staff have brought forth this item, specifically this item, or the facility side of it as well. And we can provide that listing so it's available. We could probably even just make it something we just get on our website. I'm looking back at Renee. We can just capture that those dates
Yeah.
that we did that.
If I could get some clarification, because I know a lot of those discussions, because this was a matter that was subject to negotiations, a
Right.
lot of those discussions occurred in an executive session
Right.
for obvious reasons while we were working through that process. Is it the intent of the board to highlight that those executive session dates were where these discussions occurred? Or is it more of whatever was actually out in the public realm?
Anything and everything you have, please provide to the community so that they can participate or know that this decision came thoughtfully.
One good example, Mayor, would be back in, it was actually a year and a half ago when we had UC Denver who did a needs assessment on all of our facilities long before some of these discussions even occurred. We will get that information out not only to the board but on our website. There's a 8-page summary that Ryan obviously showed parts of it specific to the Public Works facility that I think that's part of what you're looking for too, and we'll send that.
Yes, please. Yeah. Yeah. If I may just be frank, while I appreciate the red flags that were mentioned tonight, those are not necessarily red flags that I would see as a citizen of the town of Frederick, mainly because we've had lots of conversations as a board on prioritizing people over things in the town of Frederick, which we're very proud of, and we've done a nice job the last few years of right-sizing the staff that we've needed in the town of Frederick to provide service levels to our community. We were behind, quite frankly,
Sure.
for a period of time. We're catching up to that and we're increasing our level of service. That is what I think the focus should be on, and not necessarily office space or lack of storage. Those are a nuisance and I understand and respect that. But first and foremost, this community partnership with the town of Frederick and Agilent has been very strong from the beginning and it continues to get stronger. That to me is the priority in and why we're moving forward in a positive partnership. And then, as Trustee Padilla mentioned, 50 years from now, and in 2014, the day we moved into the Public Works facility in 2014, we outgrew it. And that, I can laugh at it now, but that's embarrassing. And that's not what good governance is. Good governance is in 2023 saying, what does a public works facility look like 50 years from now? And how do we make sure that we're responsible fiscally with our tax dollars to do so to serve our public and increase level of service? So
Yes.
that is what I think we should continue to highlight.
We can absolutely get that information and all of those different dates that we brought those items. It's a lot when you add it in there, but we'll do it.
Actually, in this 6-page summary, I'll send it out to the board tomorrow or tonight. In 2014, we had 6 employees in Public Works when we moved into the facility.
Six.
We have more than that now, Madam Mayor.
That's, yeah, amazing. Well, I certainly really appreciate, Ryan, all of your diligence, your team's, continued partnership with Agilent. I love driving by daily and seeing the progress of Agilent and reading all of the community aspects that they're involved in and from our events. I appreciate that very much. And just being able to brag about Agilent, we had Manufacturing Day just a few days ago, where we were celebrating Hirsch Precision, a new business to the town of Frederick, and they all were wowed about Agilent and using kind of that aspect as a roadmap for their own success. So I think continuing to elevate that partnership, including in a land swap, makes a lot of sense to me.
Thank you, Madam Mayor.
So Jason, I might understand that instead of a resolution, it would be an ordinance. Is
Right,
that the only
so
language that would
We
change?
have to do it twice.
Standard process for ordinances, and again, my apologies for not catching this much sooner in the process. Our standard process for ordinances is to have a public hearing. We didn't notice this as a part of the public hearing, and so the most conservative route, it would be to continue this item, to have it be a resolution at the next meeting, or not a resolution, an ordinance at the next meeting. So if there are folks that wanted to participate, that being said, I think you're well within your rights and abilities to pass it as an ordinance this evening if you'd like to. I just want to make sure that down the road, 99 years is a long time, that nobody goes down and says this was done by resolution, not by ordinance, and therefore there's an issue.
So we would not be violating if we did an ordinance tonight?
Right. I don't see anywhere in the state statute that it requires a hearing as a part of an ordinance.
Not our normal
If
procedure.
you're a statutory city or a home rule municipality, generally it does, but as a statutory town, it doesn't. But again, to go with our normal custom and practice, we would do an ordinance with a hearing. So I would also hate to deviate from our typical standard process.
Does the delay cause a problem?
That would be that was my next question.
Next Tuesday is just a work session, but we could make it a special meeting perhaps.
Right.
If that's the case.
Could
No,
do that.
the
We can't, the
notice?
noticing deadline's already passed for that if we have to notice it for next
For
week
public hearing.
for public hearing.
Which is the whole point.
Well, I think, right, it's not a land use issue, so the typical public hearing process wouldn't be the same. So as long as it's, what I'm getting at is we published this to the public as a resolution, not an ordinance.
Right.
So people may or may not have felt compelled to come this evening. So this could go as a regular ordinance with the opportunity for the public to be involved at a special meeting next week or at the 23rd. We can still move forward with the process this evening if you feel comfortable with directing staff to move forward and finalizing that. We can start the due diligence processes of getting the title work done and all those things so we can still meet the deadlines of closing if that's the board's intent. I just want to make sure that we do things appropriately. Sorry, I didn't catch this
Okay.
beforehand.
It sounds like you're still confident you could meet deadlines though.
I believe we can. Ultimately, if you have a resolution or a motion directing staff to move forward, we'll make sure that this gets switched to an ordinance, noticed properly in our traditional custom, and have it back, and we can move forward if it's the board's direction this evening with getting it all finalized so we can close before the end of November as anticipated by the current agreements. There wouldn't be any changes to the agreements themselves. I believe those are already hammered out.
That's the direction I support.
Yeah, going through a public hearing and how we would normally do an ordinance, I think
Agree.
is the right way to go. Is that a motion?
Well, it's direction, right?
Yeah. That's all you need. Just your direction.
So I mean, a
comfortable with
motion
that?
directing staff to move forward
motion
with the
directing?
proceedings. And I can work with Jason and or the town clerks to make sure it's accurately reflected in the meeting minutes when we get to that point. But, you know, I won't require everybody to regurgitate everything I just said.
We
But
double,
generally, if we have a support from the board, a motion to move forward as staff as directed to finalize the ordinance and get moving with the closing process on the contract so we can have those things in the work.
we check in with Mayor Pro Tem March.
He just unmuted.
Mayor Pro Tem, did you have a comment?
Yeah, I just wanted to say, I think we need to move forward on this thing and following our procedures that we normally would do. And if that means we back up a step and set it up so we can have a proper public hearing, that's more the way that goes well with transparency that we want to keep. So
I agree. Complicated motion.
I guess if all's in favor of moving forward and it's described, we'll do so.
I would prefer that be 1 week from today, if possible, so that we can move forward and try to.
I'll work with town clerk staff to get it renoticed for next week as a special meeting to include this as the item for an ordinance.
So, Mayor, I move to direct staff to create an ordinance with the same documents attached and to notice it as a public hearing as soon as possible. And to keep moving forward with the title work to meet the deadlines and the agreements.
I second.
Trustee Lamont.
Yes.
Trustee Belvey.
Yes.
Trustee Padilla.
Yes.
Trustee Brown.
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem March.
Yes.
Passes 5-0.
And we wouldn't anticipate needing Agilent to come back for next week.
No, our apologies that you came all the way from California as well. We appreciate. Well, we have a lovely town for you to visit for a few days if you'd like to, but.
Wonderful barbecue tonight.
Oh, great. I'm glad to hear that. Well, our apologies for the delay, but we do things appropriately and correct here in the town of Frederick. So thanks for your patience. Ryan, feel free to add that to the very first item to our agenda next Tuesday. So
We will do that, Madam Mayor. I think we already took notes on that. I would be remiss if I didn't just give a little bit of acknowledgement. Kevin was the face behind like a lot of the legal stuff. And so I don't believe it's his role that he went to law school for was to work on land use stuff. I think it was tax law, right? The rest of us, that other duties as a signed component of our job description became like in like size 36 font. And so we really appreciate being able to develop some of these additional new relationships over the course of the last year and a half with some of the other folks that we hadn't previously worked with. Kevin's been nothing but amazing, just like the rest of the team, frankly. Brian, we had interacted with before, at different points throughout the process as well. And so I have to be able to give some acknowledgement there.
Thank you.
yes, thank you. Appreciate your advocacy.
Appreciate your patience. We had I don't know how many attorneys working on this, and nobody else caught this issue, but it's my issue to catch. So
It takes a village, but don't do it again. Just kidding. Just teasing.
Peer review?
No.
to be fair, I've never done a 99-year lease
Yeah.
property.
No, it's okay.
This is a new venture, but
Thank you for bringing it up tonight that we follow a process. So
I figured it'd be easier to do it here in the public so everybody can ridicule me than tomorrow when I say, hey, we need to do something different.
right. T-shirt. It's my fault. Sure. I like it.
Probably my fault. Yeah.
Right. Okay. I look forward to addressing that item next week. Thank you, Ryan.
Yep.
All right. We have trustee reports. Anyone have any items they want to address this evening?
Just for me, I will start being our rep on the Denver Regional Council of Governments. I actually can't go to October's because I'll be in Durango, but Brian has organized a briefing for me on the 27th
Great.
of October, and so I will begin going in November.
Okay. And you'll bring back what you know to us each month.
And then if you all have things you want me to bring forward too, let me know. But I will figure that out and let you know what the input opportunities are.
Great, thank you. I think you just being a constant, I think will be helpful. Yeah, we'll start there. But thank you for doing that. Appreciate that. Okay.
Don't forget about Dan.
Oh yeah, Trustee March, do you have any items on trustee reports? Mayor Pro Tem March. I
I
don't know.
have nothing, Mayor. I have nothing, Mayor Kreitz.
Okay, thank you.
Mayor,
I'm good.
Mayor,
Yes. He's all good.
if you had, you called on Chad?
I'm not gonna call on Chad.
Okay, good. Mayor Kreitz, I wanted to
Just
just
kidding.
briefly talk about the planning and the options of, on the parks plan. I've received several comments from my neighbors, and I know I saw a lot of, online comments through Nextdoor regarding the placement of certain things, most notably tent camping. And I've already talked to, Colby about it, but, there's some real concerns expressed about the tent camping, and it was, they are not wanting it. Now, Colby said that when I talked to him tonight, that it was, they're gonna get some other options out here, hopefully by the end of November.
Mm.
But, the distaste for the tent camping was really,
Loud.
loud, yes, thank you. I had one of my neighbors post, and I went and walked to the mailbox. Ended up having a little bit of a meeting out in the driveway, talking to him about it. But very excited about certain aspects, but tent camping is a no.
Loud and clear.
Loud and clear, loud and clear. And you know, they also made other comments about signs that they'd like to see, or painting, striping that they'd like to see. But
You provided those to Kobe as well?
yes,
Okay.
and I'll be contacting the right departments on public works and things like that.
And you all saw that's the recommendation in the concept, the tent camping, so you know what the reference is.
There's a little piece with it, yeah.
And just to, I suppose, just to, in some ways, defend the Parks Department and Kobe in saying that it wasn't Kobe's concept, and it's one of a few concepts. So if you have community members who are really frustrated with you that you have provided this as a concept, tent camping, potentially at FRA, I would just remind everyone of the goal. The goal was, let's provide some pictography as a concept. We all know what a concept means, and get feedback from the community. So if that was the goal, was to get someone to look at the plan and say, I like it or I don't like it, we have succeeded in that goal. They looked at the plan. So appreciate
Appreciate it.
the process is working, right?
The process is working, because as I got a lot of comments and negative comments about the tent camping and the aspects of where things are going to be placed, I'm telling them things can be moved out and moved around.
Right.
They were also very positive about what that area is going to be and what opportunities the community has for that. You know, the parks, the recreation area, the playground, the ADA concept of parks, and you know, a lot of them were very positive about that. Strong.
Just no tent camping.
And I explained it to them, but and it made them feel better that somebody listened,
Yeah.
was watching the comments and the website, the town website. So.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, I look forward to seeing what all those results are.
So do I.
Yeah, fascinating. Anything else?
Nope, not from me.
Not from either of them? No? Okay. Anything from staff?
Actually, maybe just one update in regards to plan working with the transition of the town clerk. We should have, we've reached out to a company that can cover the election, so we should have a contract, I'm hoping, secured by the end of this month to start that process. And that will be in place, which is a huge relief off of our shoulders. And then we'll continue to have updates. Our hope and plan is to get that position posted. You'll probably see it posted
Great.
so we'll be moving quickly. And I'll keep the board updated. We'll probably have some, send out some suggestions to have at least a member of the board available to help out with some of last week on ways we can consolidate it, but we definitely want to make sure that we have that good partnership.
Sure. I'm happy to volunteer for that position. Yeah. Yeah. Thank you for that update. Officially that position is no longer at the town at current.
Correct.
Okay. All right. Thank you. Does anyone have any questions about where we are on the responses and action or inaction on County Road 5? Feel good about that. Yes. I feel like we have answered that. Thank you. I will not be providing any more responses unless you all, unless this continues to a point where we need to de-escalate again, but I feel very confident in our team, and the actions that they provided are things that you all will have the decision to support when it comes to budget season very soon. So right now, I just didn't want any of you to feel like we were being neglectful in our communication to those on County Road 5.
No, I don't feel.
All right, thanks. Okay, any other matters? No? All right, we're adjourned. Thank you. Have we ever been done at 8 o'clock at night?